Jesus once looked at a man who did everything right, saved wisely, planned carefully, built real financial security, and said that man's soul was bankrupt. Not because he had too much money, but because of what he was asking his money to do. That question has been sitting with me for weeks. And the more I dug into the context and the actual world Jesus was speaking into that day, the more uncomfortable it got. Welcome to Jesus in Context for today, where we go verse by verse into what Jesus actually said. And today, that means we need to talk about your financial plan. Because by the end of this video, you might be looking at it very differently.
By every standard we use today, this man was absolutely crushing it, and God still called him a fool. I want you to picture someone. He's not lazy, he's not reckless, he's definitely not the kind of guy who blows his paycheck on the weekend and wonders where it went on Monday. This guy is disciplined, he saved, he invested, he built something real over years of real work. He didn't buy things he couldn't afford. He didn't live beyond his means. He planned far enough ahead that he earned the right to stop planning, to stop working, and just enjoy what he built. By our standards, he nailed it. If he were alive today, he'd have a LinkedIn profile that made you feel like you weren't working hard enough. He might show up in a CNBC article on early retirement. His financial plan would be the one your advisor prints out and slides across the desk and says, This is what we're aiming for. And then God looked at this man's entire life and said one word: fool. Not wicked, not criminal, not greedy in the obvious way, fool. And I think that should make every one of us a little uncomfortable, because if we're being honest, this man looks a lot like us. Before we get into the parable itself, we need to understand why Jesus told it, because this is one of those moments where context completely changes the meaning. Here's what actually happened. Jesus is in the middle of a massive crowd. He's teaching. People are hanging on every word. And then someone pushes through to the front and interrupts him. Imagine this for a second. Imagine interrupting a world-renowned speaker, someone people are calling a miracle worker, a prophet, possibly the Messiah, to ask him to sort out your family's bank account dispute. That's exactly what happened. This person looked Jesus in the face and said, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Of all the things you could ask for, but here's why that moment is actually genius. Because Jesus doesn't roll his eyes. He doesn't deflect. He looks at that man, and then he looks at the entire crowd behind him, and he says something that should stop us cold. Watch out. Guard yourselves against all kinds of greed. Not obvious greed, not criminal greed, not the greed that shows up on a police report, all kinds. The kind you can see coming, and the kind that looks completely reasonable. And then, to make sure everyone in that crowd understood exactly what he meant, he told a story. The land of a certain rich man produced a good harvest. Right there, most of us switch off. We hear rich man and we think, that's not me. I'm just trying to get by. I'm trying to be responsible. Stay with me, because Jesus isn't talking about this man's income. He's talking about what this man did when he had more than he expected. The man had a windfall, a bumper crop, more grain than his current barns could hold. And he did what any smart, rational person would do. He started thinking through his options. What shall I do? I don't have room for all of this. And then he answered his own question. I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my old barns and build bigger ones. Store everything. Build enough cushion that I never have to worry again. And then, finally, I can relax. Eat, drink, enjoy my life. Does that sound like a plan you've had? Because I've had that plan, almost word for word. If I can just get to X, then I can finally breathe. That's the plan. That's always been the plan. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about. Now, it's tempting to stop here and say the man was simply selfish. And there's truth in that. But the deeper problem isn't his personality. It's that his entire strategy was built on 3 lies. 3 lies that sounded completely reasonable. 3 lies we still tell ourselves every single day. Here's the first one. The man's instinct when he had more than he expected was to contain it, build bigger walls around it, control it, lock it down. And this feels so rational that it's almost invisible as a lie. Of course you save when you have extra. Proverbs literally tells us to look at the ant and do exactly that. But here's where he went wrong. He didn't just want enough. He wanted enough to never feel afraid again. He wasn't building barns. He was building a fortress against uncertainty, against loss, against his own mortality. And here's the thing about that kind of fortress. You can always build it bigger, and it will never feel finished. Because the fear it's designed to keep out, it doesn't live outside the walls. It lives inside the man. More money has never permanently cured the anxiety of not having enough money. It just recalibrates the number you're afraid of losing. This is the one that hits hardest, and it's buried in a single line that most people read right past. Jesus says the man talked to his soul. He didn't say, "I'll have a comfortable retirement." He didn't say, "My family will be secure." He said, "Soul, you have plenty laid up. Take life easy." He was solving a soul problem with a financial solution. He looked at his net worth, and he told the deepest part of himself, "You're okay now. You can relax. You're safe." And that is a transaction that money is completely unqualified to make. Money can pay your mortgage, fund your kids' college, give you options most people never get, but it cannot speak to your soul. Because here's the thing about 3 a.m. When the house is quiet and you're lying there and the spreadsheet doesn't matter anymore, the real questions come. Am I actually enough if the money disappears? Who loves me if I stop being successful? What happens when I can't build anymore? Did any of this actually mean something? Money has tried to answer those questions for a lot of people with very full accounts. Ask them if it worked. Okay, before we get to the third lie, I have to stop for a second. Because when I first really sat with this parable, not just read past it, this second one hit me. I realized I had been doing the same thing. Not in some dramatic way, just quietly in the background, telling myself that once I hit a certain number, the anxiety would stop. It hadn't happened. I just kept moving the goalposts. So if you're feeling something right now, that small pull of recognition, that's not an accident. Stay with it, because the third lie is where it gets really interesting. You've probably heard of the FIRE movement. Financial independence, retire early. The core idea? Save aggressively. Build a portfolio large enough that the annual returns fund your life indefinitely. Hit your number. Stop working. Freedom. The discipline behind FIRE is genuinely admirable. There's nothing wrong with financial independence, but there's a version of that dream, and the rich fool lived it in ancient form, where the entire goal is to build a life where you are completely self-sufficient, where the dream isn't freedom for something greater, it's just freedom from anything that requires you to depend. And that version, Jesus has a word for it. In the FIRE community, there's a concept called the safe withdrawal rate. It's the percentage you can pull from your portfolio each year without running out of money. Get that right, and in theory, you've solved the problem. Now here's a question Jesus would ask. What's your spiritual growth rate? One account is perfectly optimized. The other hasn't had a deposit in years. And the man with the full barns didn't know which one actually mattered until the night it was too late. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's an interesting ancient story about barns, but I want to show you exactly what this looks like in 2026. Meet Dave. Dave is not a real person, but I'd bet you know him. You might even recognize yourself in him. Dave is 41. He's a tech manager in a mid-sized city. Good money, not spectacular, but good. He's been maxing out his 401k for 15 years. He has a brokerage account, a rental property, and a spreadsheet that gets updated every Sunday morning. Before church, the spreadsheet comes first. Dave's goal is to hit his FIRE number at 52, the number where, according to the math, he never has to work again, where his portfolio generates enough that he can walk away from the job he half likes and spend his time doing what he actually wants to do. Dave's not a bad guy. He's generous, up to a point. He tithes when the budget feels comfortable. He volunteers when the calendar opens up, which it doesn't often. But Dave has a plan. and the plan has a finish line, and until he crosses it, everything else is slightly on hold. The generosity can expand later. The serving can deepen later. The investing in people, community, faith, all of it can intensify once the number is locked in. And God looks at Dave's plan, just like God looked at the rich fool's barn, and the question isn't whether the math adds up. The question is, what is the plan actually for? Because Dave hasn't built a retirement plan. Dave has built a timeline for when his real life begins. And Jesus, gently, clearly, without judgment but without softening it either, would look at Dave and say, "You don't have that kind of time." Then God speaks, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" God doesn't say wicked. God doesn't say thief. God doesn't threaten hell for having a retirement account. God says fool, because a fool, in the biblical sense, isn't someone evil. A fool is someone who has lost touch with what is actually real. The Greek word is aphron, without mind, disconnected from reality. And the reality God was pointing to was devastatingly simple. Your life is not yours to keep. It never was. The only thing you ever controlled was what you did with the time you were given. And here is what I think is the most quietly devastating detail in the entire parable. The man's barns were full. On the night God came for him, they were absolutely, completely, entirely worthless. Every account, every strategy, every percentage point of return, every projected retirement date, not $1 of it crossed over. Now, I have to be careful here, and I mean this. Jesus is not telling you to stop saving money. He is not saying retirement is a sin. He is not saying financial planning is a sign of weak faith. What he's doing is far more surgical than a blanket statement about wealth. He's asking you to look at the condition of your soul underneath the spreadsheet. Is your financial plan making you more generous as it grows, or more protective? Is growing your security increasing your trust in God, or quietly replacing it? When your net worth ticks up, do you feel closer to the things that actually matter, or do you feel like you need them a little less? Here is the line that split everything open for me the first time I found it. The rich fool didn't lose his soul because he had money. He lost his soul because his money had him. And the terrifying thing about that sentence is, you cannot see it from the outside. The spreadsheet looks the same. The discipline looks the same. The retirement account looks the same. The only difference is what's happening in the quiet places inside you. Is money your tool, or has it quietly become your answer to the questions only God is supposed to answer? Jesus ended the parable with a question he clearly intended to leave unanswered. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. Rich toward God. I've sat with that phrase for a long time, and here's where I've landed. Being rich toward God doesn't mean giving everything away. It doesn't mean refusing to plan. It means living in a way where the things that matter to God, people, generosity, justice, love, eternity, are being actively funded. Not someday, right now. Not after the number. Not when the calendar opens up. Now. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Not to condemn, but because I genuinely believe it's worth sitting with today. What are you being rich toward? Because the night the rich fool didn't see coming, it came anyway. But you're watching this, which means you still have time to ask the question he never asked. Don't scroll past that. Sit with it.
And if this helped you see Jesus' words with fresh clarity, subscribe to Jesus in Context for today for more teachings that uncover what Jesus really meant. May the Lord help us hold our resources with open hands, trust Him more than our own plan, and become truly rich toward God. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll see you in the next one.